Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here from Miss Carrie's Creations. Today I'm going to be creating a title page of this album using some components from the November Fox box. The titles, icons, stencil, and paper snips are perfect for your fall projects. When I was planning this project, I chose items from the Harvest collection for my gratitude album. I love the addition of teal in this collection. When my Fox box arrived, I was so excited to see that the colors of these perspectives and paper snips matched perfectly. In the Fox box, there are two sets of perspectives. In this collection, I've pulled out the Count Your Blessings title for the start of my album. If you purchase the Fox Box Plus, you will also receive the set of paper snips and this lovely stencil. The colors and textures are going to be a wonderful addition to my album. I'm going to start by creating a background for this page using some cream cardstock and weathered wood ink. I'm going to add a little bit of ink to a piece of acetate, spritz it with water, and apply the color to my cardstock. Weathered wood is a soft gray blue, which goes well with the other colors I'm going to be using today. I'm going to dry this a little bit with my heat tool, and then I'll add some texture paste with a stencil. I'm using a magnetic board to hold all of this in place, and then I'll apply some opaque texture paste to the page. I'm just going to add this in the center of the page. Some of this is going to be hidden by my photo and other elements, but I do like the idea of having this texture peek out behind my photo and the leaves that I'm going to be adding. After the texture paste had dried, I added a little bit of splatter with that weathered wood ink. I just added a little bit more of that ink to the acetate, spritzed it with water, and then splattered it on using a couple of paintbrushes. Now, both my photo and the perspective I'm using have a golden hue, so I've grabbed some dandelion shimmers and I'm going to splatter that a little bit onto the page. When everything had dried, I attached this to some patterned paper, which I gutted in the center to create a nice little frame, and then I added some stitching around it with a sewing machine. For those of you who use a sewing machine, I want to show you a little trick to help pull your threads to the back of your pages. When you sew, you end up with one thread on the front and one thread on the back. Now, we don't want to snip these because it can cause that stitching to become undone over time. Instead, I want to pull that top thread to the back, and then I'll secure it with some tape or washi tape. I'm going to be using this needle threader to help pull the thread towards the back. I'm going to poke the wire portion through the hole where that thread stops. Then I'm going to push the thread into the wire loop and pull it back through. This pulls that thread towards the back, and then I can just secure it in place. I'm going to show you this one more time with another piece. Now, this little trick with the needle threader has saved me so much time. I've tried tweezers and poker tools, or even threading the thread through a needle and then trying to push it through, but this needle threader trick is a really fast way for me to pull those threads towards the back. I hope this little trick helps you in the future. Now that the background is assembled, I'm going to bring in my photo and some other elements to create my page. With this being the title page of my album, I decided that a simple, generic photo would be best. This one was taken in my garden of some fall flowers against my fence, and I love the feeling that it gives. I've also brought in a piece of pattern paper to place behind it that is torn along one edge. You can also see here that I have brought in a couple of different leaf elements. This set of leaves have been cut from the paper snip sheet, and the other was cut using some dies. I just cut these out of some script and patterns on the paper, and then I added a little bit of stitching to the centers to give them some texture. This didn't take me long to do, but if stitching isn't your thing, you can skip it. I just placed the leaf onto some fun foam and took a piercing tool and added holes for my stitching where the vein indentations were. You could also recreate this with a pen, a watercolor pencil, or a stitching stamp. I'm going to be adhering the leaves in place behind the photo. I'm laying out the paper snip leaves and the pattern paper leaves above and below the photo frames, trying to be mindful of the colors and shapes as I lay these in place. You're going to see that I'm laying these out by color first, making sure that the color I use at the top is repeated at the bottom. And then I'm going to start to balance out the sizes and shapes. I want most of the weight to be at the base of the page, so those larger leaves are going to go there. Once I figured out where all the leaves were going to go, I brought in some thin foam tape and started adhering them in place. To match the distressed feeling of the page, I ran a sanding block over the paper snip leaves and added some dimension by rolling and folding the edges. To create the look of layers, I tucked some of the leaves underneath others and doubled up the foam tape to give it even more dimension. Now, it took me a bit to get all of these pieces in place, and I did end up moving a few into other areas to balance out the page a little bit more. I also cut some little green sprigs from some pattern paper, and I really debated if I should add these, but once I did, I liked the bit of contrast it brought to the leaves. I did just tuck these in place with a little bit of glue. Before I adhere the photo in place, I want to bring in a horizontal element to the page. Everything at this point has been vertical. The stenciling is vertical, the leaves are vertical, and the photo is vertical. So I'm going to create horizontal lines with twine. I'm just going to wrap some twine in an X shape across the center of the page, and then I'm going to tape the ends in place on the back. Now, to be honest, when I started doing this, I wasn't quite sure if it would work, but I really like the way it looks. Now I can adhere the photo in place on some foam, and then I'll bring in some more items for the layout. I'm going to lay my perspective here in the lower right corner. To help it stand out a little bit more, I'm going to tuck some yellow flowers behind it and add a teal label sticker below to ground it. When I'm building titles, I like to add elements above and below my main title just to help it stand out a little bit more. Things like label stickers and washi tape also help to ground your title and create another horizontal line on your layout. On top of that label sticker, I'm adding the word documented from the paper snip sheet. This is a great phrase for the title page of the album because this is going to document what I'm thankful for. I did sand this a little bit so that it matched the other elements on my page. To create some diagonal flow, I'm going to place a teal circle sticker in the upper left corner and add a few butterflies. The butterflies that I'm using have a golden color to them, which matches the title and the die cut leaves. I'm tucking a smaller butterfly behind that circle, and then I'm going to add a larger one above the title. Now, I did debate on adding a third because I like odd numbers, but this smaller page is already getting pretty crowded, so I decided not to cover up any more leaves or bits of the title. I'm going to add a few brown acrylic dots to this page, which will bring in some neutral tones and highlight the words in the title, and then I'll share the finished layout. This is a 6x8 title page for my gratitude album. There are so many layers and textures on this page, starting with that texture paste stenciling in the background, the paper snip and pattern paper leaves that are layered behind the photo, that acrylic title with a golden tone, the twine that goes across the page, and bits of stitching and ephemera. Now I'm going to show a few close-ups of this page so that you can see it in a little more detail. Although I built this page for a smaller album, you could easily recreate these elements on a larger layout. There are plenty of leaves on that paper snip sheet to create a full-size page. And you can add to those leaves using die cuts or cutting machine images that you own. I want to thank you for joining me for another scrapbook project. If you would like to see more of my creations, you can visit my channel or follow Miss Carrie's Creations online. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.